Hello! Welcome back to my channel. My name is Kelsey and you might be wondering, where have I been? Well, the month of March, not only did I read 15 books, but I was also depressed. And I hated everything that I filmed and I didn't want to record anything, so here we are. We're gonna do my monthly wrap-up. So like I said, I read 15 books. It came out to a total of 4,720 pages, which averaged at about 153 pages a day, which kind of makes sense when I look at the piles of books and what I read. So I just want to go into a few statistics because I like doing that. I read 10 female authors this month, 5 male authors, 11 adult books, 4 young adult novels, 3 2-star books, 3 3-star books, 6 4-star books, 3 5-star books, which it was such a good reading month. I can't wait to talk about the 5 stars because I actually really enjoyed all of them. And then it averaged out to about a 3.8 rating overall. So I'm just going to talk about the 2 books I read this month for special videos. I read Running with Scissors and Indian Horse. Both of those will be talked about in future videos where I read my friends' favorite books, and I will link them down below once they're up. Those are the videos that I will be talking about how I felt about those novels and discussing with my friends why they liked it, why I may or may not have liked the novel. So hopefully those will go up soon. I hope that you really enjoy them. Let's get into the other books. So I'm gonna do this in a way where I talk about my least favorite books to my most favorite books, as opposed to I talk about when in the month I read them. I just feel like that'll be more fun. The first 2-star book I read in the month of March was Grand Menteur by Jean-Marc Assin. This is a story about a young girl who is born within a gang family. Her father is the Grand Menteur, the big liar, the one who is able to sneak his way through criminal organizations, away from the cops, stuff like that. And she kind of wants to belong in this gang family, but because she is a girl, she's kind of limited in what she can do within this family. I thought that that was an interesting discussion. We did discuss the book with the author within my Indigenous Diaspora class, and he was talking about how if his main character was born as a boy, his father would have willingly accepted him into the gang life, and because she was a woman, she was kind of limited to what a traditional woman's role would be, which is kind of like cooking, staying in the background, not really having a direct role, and she really wanted a direct role, which is something I did appreciate in the novel. However, it didn't come across as strongly as I think this author wanted, and I think when he spoke about the novel, it came off much more engaging than what was actually written down on the page, and so I couldn't really devote a real love to it because I was kind of limited in what he was providing on page. I liked what he was talking about, however, his writing was kind of wishy-washy. Some lines were good, other lines were kind of direct and boring. As well, the plot was fairly rushed. Like, a lot of things were happening within pages. I had to like reread several pages to understand what was going on, and then because of that we didn't really have a relationship with the characters. So overall, while I feel like this novel had a lot of potential, it was kind of lacking on other fronts. The other 2-star book I read this month was Persuasion by Jane Austen. It's about Anne Elliot and how her ex-lover, Captain Wentworth, comes back to town after he's been in the Navy for quite some time. She's wondering whether or not they should rekindle their romance. This was written right around the time Jane Austen had passed away and was published posthumously. I did feel like it kind of showed. I'm not sure if the ending was intended to be the ending that it was. This novel is fairly short for a Jane Austen novel. It's only 300 pages, and while it was angsty and did build up to this relationship between Anne and Captain Wentworth, it kind of ended so abruptly, and you're kind of thrust into this time where you know that this couple was a couple, and it's kind of a will they won't they get back together situation. While I appreciated Anne as a character, I think because she is 27 in the novel, so fairly mature, I relate to her as opposed to Emma or Elizabeth, who are younger. Anne was fairly mature. I did appreciate that, but once again, I don't think Jane Austen is for me. I've read 4 of her books now. Every book I'm kind of like bored with what is happening, because I do think Jane Austen is a brilliant writer. I just think her execution is kind of poor in my eyes, but I understand I don't want to limit what she has done for women's novels. I mean, she is clearly at the forefront of women's writing, and I don't want to discredit that. I just think that Jane Austen and the problems that she wrote about at the time for women were not for me. Now I will go on to my 3-star novels. The first one is Game by Richard Powers. This is a novel that takes place in 2 timelines. One is following a company who is moving from creating soaps to creating pesticides and more chemically based things. And the other timeline is following this woman called Laura, and she discovers that she has ovarian cancer. And when you see these 2 timelines together, you can kind of figure out that Laura is wondering if she got ovarian cancer from being exposed to the Claire company in her town. I think this novel was an extremely dense read that kind of didn't need to be so dense. Powers was using the corporation as a main protagonist when I feel like they didn't really need to be a main protagonist. Learning the history of the company was interesting, but at the same time I don't feel like it was extremely necessary because, like I said, just from the synopsis alone you can kind of put 2 and 2 together. You know that Laura is going to wonder if getting ovarian cancer comes from being exposed to this chemical company. So really we didn't need to kind of have the history. Like, learning that this company went from being a soap company to a chemical company had no real impact on me. It could have just been a chemical company from the beginning. But at the same time I understand that these small changes within the company affected people over time, and I understand that that was the point of the novel. And I did think that it was an interesting choice, but like I said, could have been omitted. There was nothing special about this. 3 out of 5 stars. The next 3-star book I read this month was The Descendant of the Crane by Joan He. This is a story that follows a girl whose father, the king, was murdered, and she becomes the new queen, but she goes on kind of this mission to discover why her father was murdered or who murdered her father. A lot happened in this book. I'm just gonna say that. It was sometimes confusing but fairly straightforward because the writing was very simplistic. I think there was a lot of political intrigue in this novel that made it really interesting, and I understand that that is why people compare this. They say it's like a young adult Game of Thrones, but I wouldn't say the political intrigue is as intricate. There were like plot twists that were fairly interesting, but I wouldn't say that they were crazy or like that I wasn't expecting them. You know what I mean? I think this novel faltered in its pacing. There were some scenes that were extremely long and developed and intrinsic to what was happening, and then there were other scenes that were so short and quick, and I felt like they were important, but they weren't given as much time as these other frivolous moments within the timeline. And I was like rereading passages because I'm like, I must be missing something. Like, why did this go so fast? What is happening? How did they jump from here to here? Because these, I felt intrinsic scenes were so underdeveloped compared to other scenes, and I was kind of thrown off by this pacing. And I also think like a lot of things could have been done within the mysteries. Like, a lot of things kind of just happened and were done just to solve the mystery, and they were told to us and not really shown. And there were also several characters that were inserted in this novel for sake of plot, for sake of romance, and I didn't feel like they were necessary. Like, if you would have omitted that character, the story would have still continued without them. So it felt kind of off, like everything was just slightly off. But I did still enjoy my time reading it, and I think for a debut novel it was pretty good. So I'm giving it a 3.5 stars. Overall, I had a good time with this novel, and I'm excited to see what Joan He publishes next. The last 3-star read I read this month was Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor. This is a story that follows a young girl named Karu, and she lives in Prague, but also was raised by these chimera that live in a dimension called Elsewhere. And she moves between these 2 worlds. She kind of runs errands for the head chimera that also is kind of a stand-in for a father figure for her. And then as the story develops, you learn a lot about Karu's past and why she's kind of kept in the dark about both worlds. I'm just gonna say straight up, I gave this 3.5 stars, but I was severely disappointed by this novel. I think by splitting it into 3 parts, you understand kind of where I'm coming from. The beginning, where Karu was kind of like this mystery and you didn't really know what was going on in her world, was really interesting. I was hooked the entire time. Once a specific character comes in the middle, I think the novel really suffered from that point. This character kind of comes in and shifts the story, but in a way that made me not like it. Like, he came in and was 100% a romantic figure, and people are saying like, oh, this novel doesn't have insta-love. It does. And while the 3rd part explained everything and the reason why these 2 characters come together and why they crash severely into each other, I feel like that is not enough to explain such a heavily inserted romance. It was interesting. I am definitely going to continue reading because I am reading this for the Daughter of Smoke and Bone read-along, which I will link up above. So while I did enjoy this, I was severely disappointed. This is not the novel that I think people painted out to be. A lot of people really hyped this novel, and I don't think it was worth the hype. And a lot of times I always hear how beautiful Laini Taylor's writing is, and I have to say that within this novel, for sure she's improved since her debut novel, but I think in this novel her writing wasn't anything spectacular. Considering all of that, I did go into this with very high hopes and I was left kind of lacking, but I did give this 3.5 stars. I did enjoy it still. Now we will move on to the 4-star novels. One of the first ones I read this month was The Steel Prince Volume 1 by V.E. Schwab. This is a kind of prequel to the Darker Shade of Magic series. This follows King Maxim when he is a little youngling. He is a prince at this point. It's kind of him developing his personality, developing how he wants to be as a leader. I really enjoyed this, but I have to say I'm not going to give it a full 5 stars. I think simply because we know Maxim and we know where he goes, and it limits me to being attached to him as a main character. I still really enjoyed this book. I loved the art style. I think because it is so dark and brown colors, when they use magic, it's clearly shown. And it was interesting to see a magic system that I've known for 2+ years. It's my favorite series, and I've always visualized this magic system, and it was interesting to see it actually on page. I really enjoyed this, but yeah, like I said, it just wasn't the 5-star read that I was expecting, but I still enjoyed it, and I can't wait to see the next volume. I can't wait to see where V.E. Schwab goes with this graphic novel series. The next 4-star read I had this month was Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha Nagan. This follows a world where the population is split into 3 divisions: humans, half demons, and full demons. And the main character in the story is a human who gets captured and taken to the king to be one of his concubines. I thought that this was a brilliant debut novel. I had so much trouble putting this book down. I was completely invested from page 1. I loved Lei as a main character, but I especially loved Ren. I liked all the secrets that we learned over the course of the novel. I loved the female-female romance within this novel. I thought it was absolutely adorable. My only complaint with this novel and why I couldn't give it a full 5 stars was that I thought the pacing was a bit off. There were some, like I said, a lot of this novel takes place over like several months, and then the last half will take place like within a night. While I thought that this novel was interested and kept me engaged the entire time, the ending felt a little rushed for me, but I am excited to see where this series goes, and I will definitely be picking up the new book that comes out in November. The next 4-star book I read was Mockingjay by Suzanne Collins. If you don't know, this is the finale of The Hunger Games, and I was reading this with the Hunger Along hosted by Rhiannon from Crescent Moon Reads. This was a really great ending, and a lot of people say that they don't like Mockingjay. They don't like that it follows Katniss throughout District 13, how District 13 develops in the novel, but I thought this was actually a really interesting ending, and I think Suzanne Collins did a brilliant thing by allowing this District 13 to be kind of a reflection of the capital. The writing was on point, the plot was really developed. I like where Katniss ends up in this novel. I think it was really well done. The discussions about PTSD, although not directly mentioned on page, were extremely valid, and I really enjoyed it. And I won't say anything more, just that I liked it. 4 stars, great finale. I love Peeta. He's my everything. Another 4-star read for me this month was Brain on Fire by Susanna Cahalan. I actually give this a 4.5 stars. This was absolutely the most terrifying book I have ever read in my entire life because it was so far away from what I could possibly imagine could happen to a person. I'm in complete shock that everything that happened in this novel was real. I think Cahalan did an excellent job at describing everything perfectly. Her talent as an investigative reporter really shines in this book, which made it extremely fascinating, and I learned so much in this novel, but it only aided to the fact of scaring the shit out of me. I listened to this on audio and I was so scared. I had to put it down several times because I just couldn't believe that this really happened to someone. I highly recommend this novel as a brilliant piece of nonfiction, and I think if you're looking for a terrifying nonfiction read, this is the one. It's short, but it is crazy impactful. Like, I told everyone about what happened in this book because I need more people to know that this could happen. It's so scary. And the last 4-star book I read for the month was Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. This takes place in a future society where we kind of have eliminated problems. Our babies are genetically created and everybody is created in a certain level. Alpha's at the top, obviously, and it kind of keeps us at peace. Nobody is less happy to be in their stage in life. It's interesting because in this novel they talk about how we used to do things and how things were done in the past and how they had to eliminate that. I think that this novel can come off as complicating in the beginning, where you're really learning the world and you're following like Huxley's language that he uses, which is very like scientific and direct, and that reflects in the world because the world is very scientific and direct. And I think what is truly amazing to me about this novel is that it was written in 1932. I don't think I could come up with something as scarily accurate as this book. I think it really touches upon fears that we had in 1932 and fears that we still have today, which can be seen as sad or brilliant on his part. I took off 1 star because I do think that there were some moments in this novel that were kind of unnecessary, that didn't really need to happen. I am happy to knock off a classic sci-fi off my list. I thought this was brilliant and I was nervous going in, but I'm happy I read it. I really enjoyed this. Now on to my 5-star books. Each book, I'm gonna show you in order that I read them, I thought was gonna be my favorite book of the month. And then I read another 5-star book and I was like, this one's better. So the first 5-star book I read was Homegoing by Ya Jassy. I obviously give this 5 stars. This is a story that follows the generations of 2 sisters who grew up in Ghana. One is married to a slave owner and one is put on a slave ship and sent off to America. And it follows the generations that precede. I thought that this was absolutely brilliant. I was really impressed with the stylistic choices that Jassy did. In the stories that follow the African generations, the accent really shines. It really shows that they were influenced by the British takeover. They really talk with this kind of posh accent. The American descendants, they have kind of this antebellum accent, this southern accent, this New York accent that really shines in her writing, and I thought that that was brilliantly done. The fact that she can show the same family over time can develop differently. I really, really, really enjoyed it. I thought the ending was beautiful, and I just highly recommend this novel. I think it was perfect. I have nothing bad to say. This was amazing, kept me engaged the whole time. Highly, highly recommend. I thought nothing could beat that. Then I read A Visit from the Goon Squad by Jennifer Egan. This is kind of a similar writing style where each chapter follows a different person and all their stories interconnect, but it mainly follows this girl named Sasha. She works in the music industry. Every chapter was just so brilliantly done, and you really see how characters and people in your life influence you and how you influence others, and it's all a connection of pauses and time, and it was just brilliantly done. It's hard for me to discuss why I give books 5 stars because I feel like it's a feeling. Like every time I turned the page in this novel, I was hooked. I was engaged. I was seeing all the relations. I was falling in love with all of the characters. I thought this was absolutely brilliant. I loved it. And I was like, wow, can't get any better. And then I picked up Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is my favorite novel. Any novel that I've read in my past cannot compare to the feelings I got while reading this book. Daisy Jones and the Six follow, it's written in an interview style that follows this band called Daisy Jones and the Six, who wrote one album, was extremely successful, and then they broke up. Each member of the band and the people that they've affected each have a story to tell in this book, and it was just beautiful. I was so surprised by how amazing this novel was. Each and every female character in this novel was brilliant to me. I'm more of a Camilla. Tell me down below who you related to. Karen, Daisy Jones, Camilla. I loved all of them. Men in this novel are all intrinsically written, and they have like their flaws that are kind of balanced with the female characters in this book. There were so many discussions on like feminism and like being a woman in the 70s, being a woman in the music industry, much like how Sasha is affected in A Visit from the Goon Squad, and I kind of see why I gave both of these books 5 stars. You really see how each woman is affected in this, how they are presented to the public. This has so much, there was so much discussion in this novel. Feminism, substance abuse, abortion, a lot of things were touched within 326 pages, and I just ate it all up. I finished this 3 days ago and I haven't stopped thinking about it. I want to reread it now because I want to highlight all of my favorite lines. This was just so perfect, and if you have not read Daisy Jones and the Six, I highly recommend. The hype is real. I don't care if I'm participating in this. I loved it. It's my favorite book. Tell me down below how much you loved it. Don't tell me if you hated it. I don't want to know. Those were all the books I read in the month of March. Let me know what you read down below. I love to debate. Just don't tell me that you hate Daisy Jones and the Six, because I'm gonna cry and I don't want to know. So like and subscribe. Follow my social media. It's down below. Comment. Let me know what you read. Let me know what you hated in the month of March. And that's it. I don't know how to end this, so I will see you next time. Bye!